My name is Clara, and I'm 26 years old. The night I found out what my sister had done is one I'll never forget. Before I continue, please subscribe to show karma you're on the right side. Anyways, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open, obsessively refreshing my email like I had been doing for days. This wasn't just any application. I had spent weeks perfecting it, pouring every ounce of effort and hope into it. It was for the kind of job people dream about, the kind that could change the entire trajectory of a life. My resume had been polished to perfection, my cover letter carefully tailored, and I'd even gone through practice interviews just in case I was called. I wanted this more than anything, but as I scrolled through my inbox, searching for even a hint of a reply, my sister strolled in with a grin on her face, the kind that told me she was holding on to some secret. She leaned against the counter, sipping from her glass, and said, almost too casually, "You know that job you applied for? You might not hear back." At first I thought she was teasing me, the way siblings sometimes do when they sense you're nervous. I frowned and asked her what she meant. She laughed, really laughed, and said, "Because I canceled it. You left your laptop open the other night, so I logged in and withdrew your application. Don't worry, I said you weren't interested anymore." She tilted her head, still smiling, like she was waiting for me to find it funny too. For a moment, I couldn't even process the words. I sat frozen, staring at her, trying to decide if she was serious. My chest tightened as if someone had punched the air out of me. My dream job, my carefully prepared, painstakingly built chance, gone. And the person who had stolen it from me wasn't a stranger, not even a rival. It was my sister. I asked her why, my voice sharper than I intended, but she only shrugged. "It was just a joke, Clara. You get so uptight about everything. You'll find something else. Don't be so dramatic." She laughed again, the sound cutting like glass. The worst part wasn't just her words. It was the way she looked at me. Like I was foolish for caring so much, like my hard work was nothing but a punchline in her little game. I felt my face flush hot, my stomach sinking with humiliation and anger all tangled together. In that moment, something shifted in me. It wasn't just about the application anymore. It was about the disrespect, the utter disregard for something that mattered so deeply to me. She had reduced my dreams to a joke, and my family, who overheard her retelling it later that evening, chuckled along like it was a harmless prank. None of them understood what that job represented, how much it meant to me, how hard I had worked for it. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I realized this wasn't just about one cruel joke. This was the moment I decided I would never let her, or anyone, mock my future again. Growing up with my sister meant living in a shadow that never seemed to move. From as early as I can remember, she was the one who demanded attention, and I was the one who was told to make room for her. If she wanted the last piece of cake, I was told to let her have it. If she wanted to play with my toys, I was expected to share while she never had to return the favor. It started small, but those little moments piled up until they became the rhythm of our relationship. She took, and I adjusted. School only magnified the rivalry. She was the loud, charming one, always quick with a joke or a smile. Teachers loved her energy, even when it came with carelessness. I was quieter, more studious, more focused. But instead of being recognized for those qualities, I was often compared to her. "Why can't you loosen up like your sister?" they'd ask. Or at home, when report cards came in, my hard-earned grades were brushed aside because she had other talents. It didn't matter that I worked twice as hard. She was the one they celebrated, while I was told not to be so serious. The jealousy between us grew sharper as we got older. If I bought a new dress with money I'd saved, she'd roll her eyes and say I was trying too hard. If I made a new friend, She'd find a way to insert herself until suddenly I was on the outside of my own circle. It was as if she couldn't stand the idea of me having something she didn't control. And yet, whenever she sabotaged me in those small ways, my family dismissed it as sibling rivalry, telling me I was overreacting. I remember one particular summer when I had been chosen for a regional competition in school, something I had worked on for months. I was proud, truly proud. But instead of being happy for me, she muttered under her breath, "It's not a big deal, you know." Then she went around telling relatives that I had gotten in because no one else wanted to compete. It stung, but I swallowed it, because every time I tried to defend myself, my parents would say, "Don't be so sensitive, she's just teasing." That pattern never stopped. Her jealousy turned into mockery, her mockery into sabotage. Each time, I was painted as the problem if I pushed back. And slowly, I began to internalize it, that maybe I really was less than, that maybe my quiet persistence didn't matter as much as her charm. By the time we were adults, it wasn't just about little competitions anymore. It was about identity. She had to be the one in control, the one on top, and I was always expected to take the role of the serious, overlooked sister. That lifetime of rivalry wasn't harmless banter. It was the training ground for the cruel joke she played on me later. Canceling my dream job application wasn't an accident. It was the culmination of years of jealousy and dismissal, sharpened into a single act that proved what I had always felt. In her eyes, my success could never be allowed to exist without her tearing it down. The job I applied for wasn't just a paycheck. It was the kind of opportunity that shapes a life. It was with a company I had admired for years, one whose work had inspired me when I was still in college, dreaming about what I wanted my future to look like. They weren't just leaders in the industry, they were innovators, a place where ideas turned into reality, and where people like me could finally be seen for their drive and vision. From the moment I learned about them, I knew I wanted to be part of that world. I had been working toward it in quiet ways long before I even submitted the application. Every late night I spent studying, every extra project I took on at internships, every rejection I endured along the way, they were all stepping stones leading me closer to this point. When the job listing finally appeared, I felt that spark in my chest, the one that told me this was my moment. I spent hours tailoring my resume, making sure every word spoke to what I had accomplished and what I could bring to the role. I rewrote my cover letter until it felt like a story, not just a formality. By the time I hit submit, I felt both terrified and exhilarated. This wasn't about bragging rights. It wasn't about showing off to my family, though deep down, I hoped they would finally notice what I had worked for. This was about me, about finally stepping into the version of myself I had been building all along. The role promised growth, mentorship, and a chance to contribute to projects that mattered. It meant breaking out of the cycle of jobs that paid the bills, but never touched my passion. It meant proving to myself that my persistence, my sacrifices, and my quiet dedication had all been worth it. I used to imagine what it would feel like walking into their offices on my first day, badge clipped to my shirt, head held high. I imagined sitting in meetings, adding ideas that were actually heard and respected. For once, I wouldn't be the one in the background. I would be in the room, at the table, building something bigger than myself. And beyond the career itself, the job symbolized independence. It was the kind of salary that would allow me to stand completely on my own, no longer tied to anyone's dismissals or judgments. That's why her betrayal cut so deep. When my sister canceled my application, she didn't just take away a chance at employment. She tried to strip me of everything I had been building toward. She turned years of effort into a joke, and in doing so, tried to reduce my future to nothing. To her, it was a laugh. To me, it was the theft of a dream I had carried in my heart for years. The job wasn't just work. It was my passion, my purpose, my escape from being invisible. And that's why losing it hurt so much. Because in a single cruel joke, she made it clear she knew exactly how much it mattered. And that was the point. The night she told the story still burns in my memory. We were all gathered in the living room, plates of food balanced on laps, the hum of casual conversation filling the space. My parents were there, a couple of cousins too, and for a brief moment, I had almost forgotten the weight pressing on me from the silence of my inbox. Then my sister decided it was the perfect time to share her little joke. She grinned as she launched into it, her voice dripping with amusement. So, Clara was all worked up about this job she applied for, she said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. And guess what? She left her laptop open one night. So, being the responsible big sister I am, I went ahead and saved her from herself. I canceled the whole thing. Told them she wasn't interested anymore. She laughed, tilting her head back as if it was the funniest punchline in the world. The room erupted with chuckles. My father smirked, shaking his head as though he was indulging a child's silly antics. My mother wagged her finger lightly at my sister, but there was no real scolding in her tone. "Oh, you two," she said, dismissing it as harmless sibling rivalry. One of my cousins even joined in, saying, "Classic. You'll thank her one day, Clara. Maybe it wasn't the right job anyway." Each laugh felt like a knife. I sat there frozen, the heat rushing to my face, my chest tight with disbelief and rage. My dream had been treated like a prank, my effort reduced to nothing more than entertainment for the people who were supposed to support me. I wanted to scream that it wasn't funny, that she had stolen something sacred to me. But the words caught in my throat. If I spoke, I knew they would just twist it into me being too sensitive. The label I had carried for years, whenever I dared to express hurt. My sister leaned back, satisfied, enjoying the attention. "Come on, Clara," she said, grinning at me. "Don't look so serious. You always take everything to heart. It's just a job. There'll be others." Her words dripped with mockery, as if my ambitions were nothing more than toys to be broken and tossed aside. And the worst part? No one stood up for me. No one looked at her and said what she did was cruel. I felt invisible in that room, smaller with each laugh that bounced off the walls. My family's indifference was more painful than her words. They couldn't see the years of work that went into that application, the nights of preparation, the hope I had carried. To them, it was just another story to laugh about, another reason to roll their eyes at me. In that moment, sitting silent among their laughter, I realized the depth of the betrayal. It wasn't just my sister mocking me. It was everyone else's willingness to dismiss my pain. That humiliation hardened into something else deep inside me, a quiet, burning resolve that I would never let their laughter define me again. I sat there that night, surrounded by the sound of laughter that wasn't mine, and something inside me finally cracked. It wasn't the sharp, sudden break of glass shattering. It was slower, heavier, like a door closing after being left ajar for far too long. I had spent my entire life being dismissed, my feelings brushed off as dramatic, my achievements overlooked as unremarkable, my ambitions treated as though they were foolish whims. But this time was different. This time, their laughter didn't just sting, it solidified something in me. I thought back to all the moments that had led here. The times in school when I brought home perfect grades and heard only silence, while my sister's charm and mischief were celebrated like trophies. The years of swallowing my pride every time she mocked me, rolling her eyes at my seriousness, whispering that I was boring. The countless family gatherings where my accomplishments were an afterthought, where no one asked me what I was working on, where I was always the one expected to compromise, to stay small so she could shine. I had trained myself to endure it, to hope that one day things would be different, that one day they would see me. But as I sat there, hearing them laugh at the cruelest betrayal yet, I realized they never would. My family wasn't going to wake up one morning and suddenly respect me. My sister wasn't going to stop seeing me as the butt of her jokes. The recognition I craved was never going to come from them. And in that realization, there was pain, but there was also freedom. Because if I couldn't count on them to see me, then maybe I didn't need them to. Maybe the power I'd been waiting for had been mine all along. The Rolex, the grades, the dream job application, they had all been symbols, yes, but the truth was, the strength behind them had always come from me. I was the one who stayed up late, the one who kept pushing even when no one cared, the one who dared to dream bigger than the role they had written for me. And if they couldn't recognize that, then it was their blindness, not my failure. That night became my breaking point, not because I collapsed under the weight of their dismissal, but because I refused to carry it any longer. I decided I was done being underestimated, done waiting for permission, done hoping for their validation. If my family wanted to laugh, let them. If my sister wanted to sabotage me, let her. None of it would stop me anymore. As I went to bed, the sound of their laughter still echoing in my ears, I felt strangely calm. For the first time, I wasn't aching for them to change. I wasn't clinging to the hope of their approval. Instead, I was focused on myself, on what I could build, on the future I could claim. That was the night I stopped being the overlooked one. That was the night I began becoming someone they would never be able to dismiss again. After that night, I didn't explode the way some people might have expected. I didn't storm into the living room and scream at my sister demanding she apologize or try to make it right. I didn't beg my parents to finally take my side. I didn't even bother explaining to anyone how much her so-called joke had cost me. I realized there was no point. They would never understand, or worse, they would pretend to and then laugh about it later. So instead, I grew quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from defeat, but the kind that comes from sharpening a blade in silence. I started saving my energy for myself. Every ounce of frustration, every pang of humiliation, I turned inward, converting it into focus. I stopped waiting for the world around me to change and decided that I would change myself instead. I didn't need their recognition anymore. What I needed was patience, discipline, and the courage to build something without asking anyone for permission. I became strategic. While my sister was out bragging to her friends, while my family continued to laugh and treat her cruelty as a joke, I was planning. I began studying the industries I wanted to be in, learning the skills that would set me apart, taking on projects no one else knew about. I applied to other opportunities, ones she couldn't sabotage because I kept them hidden. I worked late into the night, my laptop glowing in the dark, reminding me that this time I wasn't just chasing a job. I was building an entirely new version of myself. The silence became my shield. I stopped telling my family what I was doing because I realized they didn't deserve to know. They hadn't earned the right to be part of my story. If they couldn't respect my ambitions, then they would never get to witness the process of them coming to life. Instead of oversharing and giving them a chance to laugh again, I kept everything close to my chest. The less they knew, the more powerful I felt. It wasn't easy. There were nights when the anger boiled up, when I wanted to scream and tell the world how unfair it all was. But each time, I reminded myself that patience was a weapon too. I thought about how satisfying it would be to one day walk into a room and not need to explain myself, not need to defend myself, because the results would speak louder than anything I could say. That quiet resolve transformed me. It taught me to stop living for their approval and start living for my own vision. It forced me to grow tougher, to hold steady when things got hard, to understand that real success isn't built on noise or drama. It's built brick by brick, in silence, when no one is watching. My sister thought she had broken me with her prank. What she didn't realize was that she had only given me the clarity to fight differently, patiently, quietly, and with a discipline she could never match. In the weeks that followed, I stopped obsessing over the job application my sister had stolen from me. At first, it was hard to let go. I kept replaying it in my mind, wondering what might have been if she hadn't interfered. But eventually, I realized dwelling on what was gone wasn't going to build anything new. If one door had been slammed in my face, then I would create my own. I didn't need to wait for a company to hand me an opportunity. I could start shaping my own path, one small step at a time. I began freelancing. At first, it was small, odd projects that didn't pay much but gave me experience and confidence. I wrote proposals, pitched ideas, and took on clients who were willing to take a chance on me. Each completed project reminded me that I had value, that I didn't need someone else to validate my skills. I built a portfolio piece by piece, learning how to market myself, how to negotiate, and how to deliver results that spoke louder than any resume ever could. Networking became another pillar of my growth. I reached out to people quietly, without telling my family, without announcing my intentions. I sent messages, joined groups, and attended events where no one knew me as the overlooked sister. I was just Clara, someone determined to make something of herself. And slowly, those connections started opening doors, introductions to clients, collaborations, and even mentors who saw in me what my family never had, potential worth investing in. It wasn't glamorous. There were weeks when the money barely covered the bills, nights when I doubted whether I was building anything real, mornings when I felt like giving up. But then I'd remember that dinner table, the laughter echoing as my dreams were mocked. That memory became my fuel. If they thought I was nothing, I would build something undeniable. If my sister believed she could cancel my future with a single click, I would create a future so vast that no one could erase it. Eventually, the small projects turned into bigger ones. A client recommended me to someone else. A side project grew into something that demanded more of my time. Opportunities began to compound, not because I was lucky, but because I refused to stop showing up. My path didn't look like the one I had planned when I submitted that dream job application, but in some ways, it was better. It was mine. Every bit of progress was earned by me alone, with no shortcuts, no favors, no handouts. The most empowering part was the independence. For the first time, I wasn't waiting on a gatekeeper to decide my worth. I was building it myself, brick by brick, client by client, hour by hour. My sister had thought she ended something for me that night when she laughed about canceling my application. She had no idea she had only pushed me to start something bigger, something she could never touch, because it didn't come from a single job. It came from me creating my own path. Indeed, building my own path wasn't a straight line. It never is. There were days when I felt unstoppable, like every choice I made was leading me closer to something real. And then there were days when everything seemed to fall apart, when clients disappeared without paying, when proposals were rejected, when projects I poured myself into collapsed before they ever had a chance to grow. Those setbacks could have broken me if I had let them, but instead I started treating them as lessons. Each one was painful, yes, but each one carried something I could use to become stronger. I learned that resilience isn't born out of comfort. It comes from falling on your face and forcing yourself to get back up, even when it feels humiliating. The first time I lost a client because I underpriced myself, I wanted to crawl into bed and never try again. But instead, I studied what went wrong, adjusted, and came back with more confidence the next time. I learned to negotiate better, to recognize my worth, and to stop apologizing for taking up space. Money was tight at first. I said no to dinners, skipped outings, and poured everything I earned right back into the work. My sister mocked me for it, throwing little comments about how I was slaving away for peanuts. She had no idea that every late night at my desk was building something far more valuable than quick cash. It was building grit. It was proving to myself that I could survive setbacks without crumbling, that I could adapt and grow in ways she never could. The small wins meant everything. Landing a client who paid fairly, receiving a message from someone who loved the work I delivered, watching my portfolio grow from scraps into something that finally looked like a body of real achievements. Each win reminded me why I was fighting so hard. They weren't flashy victories I could wave in my family's face, but they mattered to me. They were mine. There were times I broke down, of course. Nights when the weight of rejection or exhaustion left me crying at my desk, wondering if I was just fooling myself. But the difference now was that I didn't let those tears end the story. I let them cleanse the frustration. And then I kept going. Every failure, every rejection, every setback became part of the foundation I was standing on. Resilience became my greatest teacher. It showed me that I didn't need life to be easy in order to succeed. I just needed to keep showing up, no matter how many times I was knocked down. My sister thought she had the upper hand by laughing at my struggles. But what she never understood was that struggle was exactly what made me unstoppable. Every bruise on the way up hardened me. Every mistake sharpened me. Every tiny step forward proved that resilience was more powerful than sabotage, more valuable than luck, and stronger than her cruel jokes could ever be. The breakthrough didn't arrive with fireworks or fanfare. It came quietly, disguised as an email I almost didn't open. I had grown so used to rejection that my heart didn't leap the way it once did when I saw a new message sitting in my inbox. Still, curiosity made me click, and as I read the words, my entire world shifted. A company I had admired from a distance, one even more prestigious than the original job I had lost, was inviting me to interview. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Why would they notice me? But then I remembered all the months of freelancing, the late nights, the projects I had built on my own. My name wasn't attached to just an application anymore. It was attached to results that spoke for themselves. The interview process was rigorous. They tested not just my knowledge, but my ability to adapt, to think on my feet, to handle challenges with resilience. And this time, I wasn't nervous the way I used to be. Every rejection, every small win, every sleepless night had prepared me for this. I answered with confidence, not because I was pretending, but because I had lived the answers. When they asked about failure, I told them about the lessons. When they asked about leadership, I told them about taking control of my own future. I walked out of that interview with my head high, not because I thought I had nailed it, but because for once I knew I had nothing left to prove to anyone but myself. When the offer letter came, I sat in stunned silence, staring at the screen as tears filled my eyes. The position wasn't just equal to the one I had lost, it was bigger. Higher pay, greater responsibility, a role that would allow me to grow beyond anything I had once imagined. The job my sister had stolen from me suddenly seemed small in comparison. What I had now was the opportunity of a lifetime, one no cruel joke could take away. The moment was more than validation. It was liberation. I realized that if she hadn't sabotaged me, I might never have pushed myself to this point. I might have settled for what I thought was my dream instead of discovering something greater. That painful betrayal had forced me to build resilience, and that resilience had carried me into a future brighter than the one I had originally planned. When I signed the contract, I didn't tell my family. I didn't run to my sister to show her what I had achieved. I kept it to myself, savoring the victory in silence. I knew the day would come when they would notice the difference in me, when the truth of my success would surface naturally. But in that moment, it was just mine. The breakthrough wasn't just about landing the job. It was about realizing that no one, not my sister, not my family, not their laughter, could cancel my future. They had tried, but I had built something even greater. And now, my life was no longer defined by what they took from me, but by what I had created in spite of them. When I first started on my new path, I thought success would feel like finally being able to walk into a room and prove everyone wrong. I thought it would be about the paycheck, the title, the recognition that had always been denied to me. But as the weeks turned into months, something unexpected happened. My work didn't just give me financial security, it gave me freedom. For the first time in my life, I wasn't measuring myself against my sister or waiting for my family to applaud me. I was simply living in alignment with what I knew I was capable of. The job that had once seemed like the pinnacle now felt like only the beginning. The new opportunity stretched me, challenged me, and gave me the resources to grow in ways I had never imagined. I traveled to places I'd never seen, worked with people whose brilliance inspired me, and learned skills that turned me into someone I barely recognized, in the best possible way. The girl who once sat at a dinner table swallowing humiliation was gone. In her place was a woman who no longer needed to prove herself to anyone. I began to notice how different I felt walking into each day. Instead of dread, I felt excitement. Instead of clinging to validation, I trusted myself. Even the setbacks didn't sting the way they used to, because I had learned that resilience was part of the process. Every challenge was proof that I could adapt, that I could rise again, that I didn't need anyone's permission to keep moving forward. My sister's laughter, once a voice that echoed in my head, grew quieter with every step I took into this new life. And then there was the freedom, true freedom. Not just financial, though that was part of it. It was the freedom of choice, the freedom to say yes to opportunities that excited me and no to the ones that didn't. The freedom to spend my time building what mattered to me rather than constantly defending myself to people who would never understand. I no longer feared losing anything because I had proven to myself that I could always create again. That realization was more powerful than any title or salary. What I once called my dream job had been just a stepping stone. I thought I needed it to validate my worth, but what I really needed was to discover that my worth was never up for debate. It wasn't in the approval of my family. It wasn't in the symbols I once clung to. It was in my ability to keep going, to keep building, to keep choosing myself even when others tried to cancel me out of my own story. Surpassing the dream didn't look like gloating or throwing my success in their faces. It looked like peace. It looked like walking into each day with the quiet confidence that I had created a life no one could take away. And for the first time, that was enough. It happened slowly, almost imperceptibly, but I noticed it. My sister's laughter, the kind that once rang so confidently in every room, began to fade. She didn't tease me anymore. She didn't make her little jabs about how serious I was, or how I would never measure up. Instead, her eyes followed me with something unfamiliar. Hesitation, maybe even unease. At family gatherings, when conversations turned toward careers or future plans, she grew quieter. The smugness that once coated her voice was gone, replaced with a silence that spoke louder than words. The turning point came when I arrived at dinner one evening after weeks away for work. I wasn't flashy about it, but my life had changed. I carried myself differently, not with arrogance, but with a calm assurance I had never felt before. My sister noticed. So did the rest of them. My father, who had once brushed off my ambitions as trivial, asked me a question about the project I'd been working on. My mother, who used to change the subject when I tried to share, leaned in with genuine interest. My sister sat there, her fork unmoving, watching as the spotlight shifted without me even trying. She didn't laugh. She didn't joke. She didn't interrupt. And in that silence, I saw the truth. She knew. She knew that the cruel prank she had once played, the betrayal she had dismissed as harmless fun, had not broken me. It had made me stronger. She knew that while she had spent her energy trying to tear me down, I had been building. And now I stood taller than she ever imagined I could. The rest of the family began to sense it too. Their faces changed in small but telling ways. The polite nods they used to give me out of obligation were now replaced with genuine recognition. There was surprise, maybe even a little guilt in their expressions as they realized the daughter they had overlooked had quietly surpassed the one they had favored. The laughter that once filled the room at my expense no longer came so easily. Now, when my sister spoke, her words carried less weight. The family didn't rush to agree with her or defend her. They listened to me instead. It wasn't about revenge, not really. I didn't sit there gloating or throwing my achievements in her face. I didn't need to. The silence was enough. The absence of her smugness, the absence of their dismissive smiles, was proof that everything had shifted. My sister's silence told me what she could never say out loud, that she understood I had won a victory she could never undo. For years, she had been the loud one, the one who controlled the narrative, while I was painted as the invisible, overly sensitive sister. But now, without raising my voice, without demanding their attention, the truth was undeniable. They all saw me differently. They saw what I had built, what I had become. And she, for once, had nothing to say. For so long, I thought success was something you could point to, a title on a business card, a company name that impressed people, the kind of job that made others nod with approval. I thought it was about applause, about finally being able to stand in front of my family and say, "See? I did it." But when I finally reached the point where their laughter no longer mattered, I realized success was never about them. It wasn't about convincing anyone else to see my worth. It was about how I felt when I woke up in the morning, about whether I could stand tall, knowing I had built something real. The job my sister stole from me once felt like everything. I thought that if I got it, it would change the way everyone saw me. But the truth is, even if I had landed it, they probably would have still brushed me aside. Their approval was always conditional, always fleeting. What I discovered instead was that true success isn't fragile like that. It isn't dependent on anyone else's opinion. It's built in a place no one can touch, inside of you. Success became the nights I didn't give up, even when I wanted to. It became the mornings I pushed forward despite rejection. It became the quiet strength that grew in me when no one was watching, when no one was cheering, when it was just me and the belief that I could keep going. Success wasn't loud. It didn't need an audience. It was steady, unshakable, a foundation no cruel joke or dismissive laugh could ever break. I started to see how independence was the real marker of achievement. Not independence in the sense of doing everything alone, but in the freedom to make choices without fear. The freedom to walk away from people who didn't value me. The freedom to live life on my own terms, with no one holding a string over my head. That was worth more than any job title, more than any trophy my family could have dangled in front of me. Resilience, too, became part of how I measured success. Every setback I endured was proof that I could adapt. Every failure I turned into a lesson was proof that I was growing. Instead of seeing rejection as a dead end, I began to see it as redirection. Instead of seeing loss as defeat, I began to see it as a chance to build stronger. Success wasn't the absence of struggle. It was the ability to rise because of it. And perhaps the most powerful realization of all was that the life I built was untouchable. No one could cancel it with a single click. No one could mock it into dust. No one could take it away. That's what made it mine. My sister thought she could erase me with her cruelty, but all she did was reveal a truth I carry with me every day. Success isn't about what others give you. It's about what you create for yourself and the quiet, unshakable power of knowing it cannot be stolen. Revenge, I learned, doesn't always have to be loud. It doesn't have to be about dramatic confrontations or rubbing someone's face in your success. For me, the sweetest revenge was simply knowing I had built a life my sister could never diminish, no matter how hard she tried. She had taken so much joy in humiliating me, in mocking my seriousness, in canceling my dream as if it were a joke. But now, when I look at her, I see someone who has no idea what to do in the silence I leave behind. I don't rise to her jabs anymore. I don't argue. I don't even bother proving her wrong. I don't need to. My life already has. The cruel prank that was supposed to break me became the spark that transformed me. If she hadn't canceled that application, maybe I would have walked into a job and spent years trying to prove myself to people who would never really see me. Instead, I carved my own path, and it led me to opportunities greater than I could have imagined. Every step I took after that night was mine alone, earned without shortcuts, without anyone handing me a chance. And that makes what I have untouchable. She can't laugh away the independence I built. She can't undo the resilience I earned. She can't cancel the freedom I now live in every single day. That is my quiet revenge, that her cruelty was powerless against the life I created. She thought she was stopping me, but all she did was push me into becoming unstoppable. At family dinners now, when she sits across from me, I notice the difference. She still talks, but her words don't carry the same weight they used to. My parents don't brush me aside so easily anymore. My voice is heard, my presence respected. But even if it wasn't, it wouldn't matter, because I no longer live for their validation. My success exists whether they acknowledge it or not, and that's the part my sister will never be able to touch. I don't gloat. I don't remind her of what she did or list out all the ways I've surpassed her expectations. I don't need to. The life I've built is the loudest answer I could ever give, and it requires no words. Quiet revenge is knowing that she cannot undo what I've done, cannot erase who I've become, cannot take back the strength I found in the ashes of her betrayal. She thought she had stolen my future when she clicked withdraw application. But all she really did was hand me the chance to write a different one that belonged entirely to me. And now, every day I wake up free, independent, and unshakable. I carry the greatest victory of all, the knowledge that she can never laugh at me again, because I've built a life that makes her laughter meaningless. Did you enjoy the story? If so, please let me know in the comments. Also, subscribe to support us. Thanks for watching.